The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Oshkosh Media, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host Cheryl Hentz, and I'm very happy to be joined tonight by someone who's been on here a number of times, and we're always very happy to have her. Joining us is Susan Bach. She is the Regional Director for the Better Business Bureau serving Wisconsin. You guys have kind of changed that name a little bit, haven't you?
Well, I think it just used to be Wisconsin BBB of Wisconsin.
Yeah, Northeast region. And
yeah.
so it's Better Business Bureau serving Wisconsin, and
Yes.
You're the regional director of that. So a very wise woman, and you're going to give
thank you.
listeners and viewers really a lot of good information tonight. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with, if summer ever officially, it'll be here, isn't it? Today is the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't today start summer officially?
Today or
is-
tomorrow?
Yeah, today
I think,
or tomorrow.
yes.
But the weather doesn't necessarily feel like it.
No.
But if summer ever does get here, we're going to be seeing, yard sales. We're going to be seeing rummage sales. We're going to be seeing storms. We've already had a couple of good storms.
Mm-hmm.
And all the stuff that comes
All that
with
home
that.
improvement stuff that people
Yep.
want to do,
Yep.
in the
So,
short window of time that they have to do it.
So let's start with the summer storm chasers, because we're in a region where thankfully we haven't had tornadoes right in this region in recent memory, but certainly they can happen at any time. I know when I was 17, our house got hit by a tornado, and so they kind of jump and move wherever they want to go. That's Mother Nature. But even if you don't have a tornado hit, significant winds, hail damage,
Flooding. We've had a lot of flooding in
Yep.
our part of the
we
state.
sure have. So along with these tornadoes and these heavy-duty storms and floods come other kinds of storm chasers, not the storm chasers that you see like on the Weather Channel, but other storm chasers who follow the storms, and you can take it from there and tell what they do and how they rip people off.
Well,
usually.
they're watching the headlines. They know where there's been some severe weather, and what we're afraid of happening is that they just grab, 5 of their friends, jump in a car with some tools, and head to a storm zone like Wisconsin. Not necessarily qualified, certainly not licensed. And then they say, we'll be roofers for the summer or for the week or whatever.
Or painters,
yes,
or whatever.
Right, or driveway repair people. They're not licensed. You do need a license to do that type of work here in Wisconsin. They'll go door to door, and usually the MO is that they'll knock on the door and they'll say, I see you have some loose shingles, or your siding needs repainting, or your driveway needs repair. We just happen to have some leftover material from a job we did down the street, and this is your lucky day. We can give you a great deal on some home improvement repairs, but you got to act now. You don't have time to ask, your friends for references. You don't have time to check us out. It's, today and today only. And that's when we hear after the fact that, not only were they not licensed, but they're not a reputable company at all. They will use substandard materials, the work is inferior, if they do the work at all. Some people have paid money up front thinking, that they'll come back, or, maybe it's a 2-part job or something.
Yeah.
And, then they lose all of their money. So we really want to warn people this time of year especially to watch out for those itinerant contractors. Check for licenses, take the time to check them out. Certainly go to the Better Business Bureau. Even if they're not from Wisconsin, the BBB should have some kind of report on them. Ask to see license, insurance, all of that kind of stuff. Ask to see some kind of local contract.
Right.
Don't sign a blank contract. Get all of the details in writing, and do not pay 100% up front.
Yeah, in fact, in the state of Wisconsin, if you're doing any kind of work with a contractor, they must, on their contract, under Wisconsin law, and I think it's a good thing because a lot of states aren't like this, in Wisconsin, you must put a start date and a finish date for that project.
Right.
And most reputable contractors, they may ask for a third or half down because they have to purchase materials, and that's totally reasonable, and then the balance on completion. But along with that comes something called a mechanic's lien.
Right.
And it's not the kind of mechanic's lien that is with an automobile mechanic. And this can cost people a lot of money too. Explain what the mechanic's lien is.
Well, they could also be called a lien waiver. So if, say, a general contractor isn't paying his subcontractors or his suppliers, those suppliers or subcontractors could go to the homeowner to get paid. And so before you, as a homeowner, before you sign off on a job, you'll want to get a lien waiver. And you can just go to Google and find this form and download it. They should give it to you, but if they haven't, you can certainly print one off for yourself. And make sure that both parties sign the lien waiver, so they are waiving their rights to sue you, the homeowner, if they don't get paid.
So if John Doe goes to Menards, buys something for your particular project, you would have Menards and the contractor sign it?
I think all of the parties involved would sign it.
So as a homeowner, then I would sign that, or whoever would sign it also. Okay. Here's a question. I don't know if you have the answer to this or not, Susan, but how does Menards or Fleet Farm or, John Doe Construction Supply Company, how does anyone really know what project they're buying those supplies for? When they purchase them, do they have to say it's for such and such a job, or how does anyone know who the homeowner is to go back to them?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question, but I'm assuming that everybody has a business account when they purchase supplies. Certainly, it's more difficult for a supplier like, a retail establishment, but if you're a subcontractor, then I'm sure you're well aware.
Yeah, because they're actually at the site working.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I've never heard of anyone getting caught by that anyone that I personally know, but I know some people have, and so it's good to keep track of.
Right, because
without
that, you as the homeowner are open to actually having to pay twice.
Sure, yep. And who
we don't
wants
want
to
that
do
to
that? Some of the stuff is expensive enough to begin with.
Absolutely.
When these people, these storm chasers, Susan, when they come around, is that considered door-to-door sales? Do they need a permit then from the city? Because I know door-to-door salespeople need a permit.
Yes. If that's how they're doing their marketing, and if they're going around knocking on doors, then they absolutely need a permit from the municipality.
And, if you happen to be watching this and you're in another part of the country or whatever, check with your own municipality to see if door-to-door salespeople do actually need a permit in your own area where you live, but certainly in the city of Oshkosh, permits are needed.
And not only that from the city of Oshkosh, but you would need a dwelling contractor license, a dwelling contractor qualifier license. Yeah. You probably need to pull permits, things like that.
So, building permit for sure. It's interesting because I redid a driveway at a property that I owned a number of years ago, and all I was doing, it was all cracked, and all I was doing is just removing the old stuff and having somebody put new cement in. I even needed a building permit for that.
Yeah.
You're not changing the size of it, you're not changing anything, but yeah, the city still wants a building permit. So, if you're going to be having work done, check with the city to see if you need a permit. And then there's diagrams that have to be supplied to the city and everything.
Right.
So best just not to deal with people who go door to door.
Yeah.
And along with that, though, is the door-to-door meat salesman. I always get a kick out of hearing you tell about that story, but, some people don't know what that is, and, you want to...
I mean, there are some very reputable companies that sell their products door-to-door, but some that are less than reputable. How do you tell the difference? You check them out. Certainly the BBB would have a report on them, but... the story about I'm in the driveway and my husband is...
Yeah.
So I come home from work. My husband is in the driveway. He's been stopped by somebody selling meat. He has this cooler full of meat. It's about 5 o'clock, right before dinner. And my husband is like ready to buy everything in the cooler. And... I said, well, I take out my phone and I go, what was the name of your company? Let me see what the Better Business Bureau has to say about you. And he found a reason to get the heck out of there. But the complaints that we get about people like that, everything looks nice on the top, but when you dig down a little deeper, maybe it's got some freezer burn or some other quality issues, and then it's too late to return it, or that you don't know how to return it. So, it's just, you gotta buyer beware.
I just wouldn't buy. I mean, I've been duped a few times with certain things that, like, you buy off the television ads and things like that, but and this is no disrespect to your husband at all, Susan, but I just don't think I would ever in a million years buy meat from someone just going door to door. And like you said, there are good companies out there that do things like that. I mean, Schwann's is another. We're not promoting Schwann's here, but that's one that just immediately comes to mind. But they have been around forever. And
it was somebody like that. I can't remember the name of the company. But the whole pitch was, I've got to get rid of this before the end of the day, before this is the last stop on my route and I still have a couple of boxes left. This is your lucky day.
Yeah,
and my husband, he probably would have fallen for it had I been 10 minutes later.
Yeah. So rummage sales and yard sales, we see these a lot in summer.
Yes.
What's the story there that people need to be aware of?
Well, there's the traditional yard sale, where you have things displayed in your house or in your yard, garage. There's also like the virtual yard sales now that are getting more popular, where people are selling things online, on Facebook Marketplace, on other apps. So this is a really good time to remind people about a couple of things. First of all, we want to make sure everybody is safe and not to buy anything at a yard sale that might have been recalled. Baby products are very popular at yard sales. Baby furniture like cribs and car seats, things like that. And just recently, the Consumer Product Safety Commission came out with an app that you can download onto your phone. So if you are a regular yard sale shopper, you can, search to see if that product has been recalled while you're still there. And you can do it kind of discreetly so that the yard sale host doesn't need to know that you're doing that.
Sure.
So that's really something. I would go to the Consumer Product Safety Commission's website to get more information about how to download that.
Okay.
If you are hosting a yard sale, be very careful about letting people into your house to try something on, or something like that. We don't want people to be set up to be robbed later, something like that. Just wise advice, really.
Right. Absolutely. Something that the Appleton Police Department is offering, and they've been doing this for about a year or so now, I think. And I really think it's a good idea, is they are suggesting that people actually, if you're meeting someone to finalize a deal, that you can meet at the police department.
They have safe zones.
Rather than someone going to someone else's home.
A lot of police departments are promoting those safe zones, which I think is a great idea, because it's a very dangerous situation if you are trying to buy something online. The person who you're agreeing to meet there knows that you have a big wad of money, right? So a lot of people have been victims of crimes because of this, that they were really just set up to be robbed. So a place like a safe zone, or if your police department doesn't have a safe zone, just meet in the lobby of the police department, something like that, I think is really a great thing.
Sure, yeah. Anything else related to storm chasers or summer kinds of tips before we move on to some other things?
I think we talked a lot about it, but really I think what we're really seeing now, we've had a couple of cases at the Better Business Bureau, are the driveway repaver itinerant workers. So be very extra cautious about those. Driveway repair jobs are quite expensive, and we've had people lose a lot of money. So don't fall for the, I've got extra materials, or you have to act now. Really get some information about the company and check them out.
Sure. And with a lot of purchases, there's something called the 3-day cooling off period. And I think a lot of people don't really understand what that is. They think that I've talked to some people who felt that that applies to every kind of purchase, and it doesn't.
No.
Can you explain for folks, Susan, what type of purchase a 3-day cooling off period applies for?
Yes. So
applies to, rather.
I think the intention originally for the 3-day cooling off rule were the kinds of vacuum clean sailors, salesmen, or encyclopedias or whatever. But the people used to come into your home, and you could not get them to leave until you agreed to buy something.
The pots and pans people.
Yes.
And the knives people.
And people felt really intimidated, and they just could not get them to leave until they agreed to buy something. So that's the kind of situation that is meant to protect consumers by this 3-day cooling off rule. And the rule is that if the purchase was made in your home, and you didn't have the option to get up and walk away because it's in your home, then you have 3 days to cancel the purchase in writing. You have to make that known in writing. But it doesn't apply, let's say, if you went to the car dealership.
That's the one I hear about a lot.
Yes,
People
yes.
think that they can they get
changed
buyer's
my mind.
remorse. And so they want to take that car back within a 72-hour period, and they can't.
They'll say, I felt a lot of pressure from the salesman, and, I really want to do the 3-day cooling off thing and cancel the purchase, and they're not eligible under the law because they always had the right to get up and walk away.
Yeah.
So it doesn't apply in that situation.
Yeah. No matter how intimidated you may feel. But what's interesting about car sales is that so many of them now are going to this no digger sticker price. And I think that's a good idea, because it would drive me crazy. You say, well, this is all I can afford. Well, then they go back and they talk to their sales manager, and you can see them in there talking and looking, and it was so ridiculous. It would just drive me nuts. Yeah. And so I'm glad that so many of them are going to this new thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, too.
Yeah.
Not everybody likes to negotiate like that. Certainly I'm in that category, too.
Yeah. If I'm in Mexico, I'll negotiate, but I don't like doing it in my own country.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the things that we have seen lately. We've had a couple of really tragic situations here. The Jamie Kloss one comes to mind. Mitch Lundgaard, yes, thank you. The fireman who was so horrifically shot on duty. And, people, of course, they want to do something for these victims, these folks, and their families. And they set up GoFundMe pages or things like that. How can you know that you're donating to something that is a legitimate thing? I mean, I know that a lot of times the TV stations will say, it's at such and such a bank, and you can make online donations through our website. That, I think, is a legitimate thing. But how else can you know if something's legit or not?
That is a really good question. And so let me start by saying the bad things that can happen that we've heard about. People will go door to door collecting for UNICEF or, flood victims or just whatever kind of cause they want. And some people have the best intentions, but other people are just flat out collecting money, and it's going right into their pocket. So in like the new crowdfunding sites, it's really difficult to tell the difference. And what you want to look for, let's say you're donating to a crowdsourcing site like GoFundMe. You want to read very carefully the description and see if there's a connection to the family. Like a lot of people were raising money on behalf of Jamie Kloss, wanted to give it to Jamie Kloss, but they weren't connected to Jamie Kloss, and there was no connection to her whatsoever. And so read the story of the organizer and see if maybe they have like some pictures or something that that it's really connected to her. Not one that everybody has seen of her, but something unique.
Right.
Because
and that's not to say that we hear all the time about people who want to do good things for someone and they don't know anything about them really, other than that maybe they saw a news story.
Right.
And I think that by nature most of us are kind, compassionate, giving people. And so not everybody who is out there trying to raise money or get donations of food or what have you for whatever situation there may be.
They're not all scammers.
Right.
And I understand that completely. I mean, some people have the best intentions. We've had situations where celebrities wanted to raise money for, let's say, a storm or a hurricane or something in their homeland, home area. So they had the best intentions. They want to help people, but it's not necessarily well run, well organized. They're not prepared to do that with all the donations that they receive. So you just have to kind of spend 5 minutes to do a little research before you give.
Yeah, okay. And is that something that can be done through the Better Business Bureau's website or no?
To research a charity? Yes, we do have our charitable arm is called the Wise Giving Alliance. And if you could access it through our website, bbb.org, to search for the name of a charity, or you could go to give.org. And so you just type in the name of the charity in the search bar at the top of the field, and it will show you, if we do have a report, if they meet our 20 standards of charity accountability. Okay. So we're a little... if it's a national charity, then there's a really good chance that we have a report. But if it's a local, smaller charity, we may not. But there are other resources too. There's Charity Navigator, and I don't think you can, do too much research when it comes to something like that.
This is summer almost, and by the time this airs, it will be summer. Not sure if Mother Nature knows that or not, but many people get married in the summer. And you had mentioned to me that there are some scams with wedding photographers.
Yes, just this morning we sent out an alert, the Better Business Bureau sent out an alert about a company in the Fox Valley called Say I Do Wedding Services. They have an F rating with the Better Business Bureau. We've had 16 complaints filed in the last approximately year and a half. Most of them are unresolved or unanswered, and the brides-to-be have lost about $26,000. And it's all because they've hired this company which provides photography, videography, DJ services. They've paid money up front because the company offered a discount if you paid 100% up front.
Oh.
And then they didn't show up. Or they were scheduling like engagement pictures, and every time they would schedule something, there was car broke down, dad's in the hospital, I'm sick. And so finally the brides, just canceled the contract and then didn't get a refund. Or there have been situations where the photographer didn't show up on the big day, or the DJ service or whatever. So we think he's still in business. I mean, he's got a Facebook page that is still active, and so we thought it was appropriate if he's trying to take more customers to warn people about this particular company. It has a couple of different DBAs. Magic Focus is one of them. If you go to our website and check them out, you'll be able to see hopefully some news stories and of course our report on the company.
So Magic Focus is one of their doing business as names. Say I Do Wedding Services is another. And it's the same person, is it?
Yes, his name is Scott Socket. He has
Scott Socket.
Yes. He has quite a few small claims courts actions currently going through the system. So, you'd want to certainly check there too. I don't know if people know about Wisconsin and our wonderful circuit court access, but we use it all the time at the Better Business Bureau. It's free. We're lucky to have it here in Wisconsin.
We really are, because a lot of states don't.
Right.
And if they do, because I've looked in other states, and it's not the easiest to navigate if they do have them. Ours is very easy to access, and so no pun intended. So I don't know the website address offhand. Just type in the search bar Wisconsin Circuit Court Access, and it'll pop up immediately. And it is a wonderful thing.
Right. You can
really
search by last name or company name. It really is very helpful to have a middle initial or a date of birth if you're searching by a person. And I always tell people, hey, your granddaughter has a new boyfriend. Ask him what his last name, middle initial, and date of birth is. Just you're just curious, want to get to know him a little bit better.
Or even just a name, a full name. I've looked up a lot of, tenants when I was still a landlord. I would look up tenants all the time, and I wouldn't necessarily have a last name, or I'm sorry, a middle initial or a middle name, but I was able to check out everybody.
I mean, but there are names that you think, oh, I have to, there can only be one of these. It's such a unique name, and lo and behold, there's probably 10 of them.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I, for the longest time, thought I was the only Cheryl Hentz, and wow, I learned very quickly that I'm not, so, well, that's good information to have. And so these brides, I don't care if they're out $2,600 or $26,000, what is their recourse? I mean, in Wisconsin, we have, I believe it's a $5,000 limit or a cap on small claims actions. So it would actually have to be a civil action in our circuit courts. And there's filing fees attached to that, which of course you can sue for. And if you're successful, you will be recompensed for that as well. But I mean, are these women, what's the likelihood of them getting their money back?
Well, I don't know what is going to happen to him, but certainly the only option that brides have now is to file through small claims court as of today. Okay. But
small claims as opposed to regular circuit court to go for the full amount?
Well, I mean, like some people have only lost, it started at $850
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think up to like $3,000 or something. So certainly not one person had $26,000 in losses. That was a total of all of the 16 complainants that we have. So it is, at the small claims level right now. But
Could a class action suit be filed against him?
I don't know.
I mean, I'm not an attorney, but I would imagine that an attorney out there might be thinking, if there's this many, I mean, it might be eligible for a class action.
Right.
Not sure, but, I mean, why, and you're not a lawyer and you're not the police, but do you have some sense of why this guy is not being arrested for theft and fraud? He's just out there. I'm putting you in an uncomfortable position, I can tell.
I know it takes time to build cases, and
We'll leave it at that because I think I know where you're going with that.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Sorry to have put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. But I mean, I don't know if there is a case or not. I certainly can't comment on that. But I just think because he is still appearing to take on new clients that we wanted to warn people. We certainly thought that was appropriate, and that we always, just generally speaking, have some advice for brides. Certainly do your research on this, these services that it's a kind of a one-shot deal. They only have one shot to get it right. So it's really important that you choose a reputable company and that, you don't pay 100% up front. We like to follow the rule of thirds. So in this situation, a third when you book, a third when he shows up at the wedding, and a third when you get your, your pictures or your videos after the wedding. And I think that's kind of smart to do. I mean, that's fair to the contractor, that's fair to you.
Yeah, and that's pretty much standard. And I think that anyone who's legit would be happy to follow the standard. So I don't know, but what a shame that, people are just, they never cease to amaze me about how greedy they get, capitalizing on someone's, one of the most important days in their lives.
Right.
And they're just out there to line their own pockets and feather their own nest.
Right.
And causing a lot of people heartaches. So let's talk about robocalls. Oh my God, this is just crazy. I don't even know where to begin with this because there's so many different things that you can talk about with respect to robocalls. But they drive me crazy. I know they drive a lot of people crazy. So let's talk about, first of all, what a robocall is.
Sure.
And then talk about maybe how we can protect ourselves against these things.
Absolutely. So a robocall is when you pick up the phone and there's a computer-generated voice on the other end of the phone. And maybe they're selling you, a lower interest rate on your credit card or a service warranty on your car, something like that. But they're selling you something and it's a computer-automated voice. Those are illegal in Wisconsin, everywhere. Those are illegal. The exceptions to that, people who are allowed to dial you or call you with an automated voice, are somebody who you already have a previous relationship with. So, for example, it would be okay if your pharmacy called you and used a voice, computer-generated message to tell you your prescription is ready. That's fine. If they're not selling you anything. So if my school calls and says school's been canceled for the day because of the weather, that's fine. They're allowed to use a computer-generated message. But if they are trying to sell you something, then it's illegal. So then you should just hang up because it's somebody who's not following the law.
What if they're trying to not sell you something but elicit a donation from you?
Charities are also exempt, and political campaigns are exempt.
Well, I knew political campaigns were, and I don't think we'll ever see those not being exempted, because after all, that's how these politicians are getting a lot of funds and they're getting votes, and they're certainly not going to vote against what they do that has proven to be very successful for them. So I don't think we'll ever see those robocalls go away. But God, I hate them during political season.
Yes.
But, the other thing that is, I think, becoming kind of scary is this business of spoofing phone numbers.
Right.
You know, they can call you, and so on your caller ID, it may come up as a name that you recognize. It could be it could be your work, it could be your bank, it could be your doctor's office, a family member, and their number. How do these people do this, Susan?
It's a piece of software or online software where you can basically tell your caller ID. If I was calling you, I could enter a number that I want to appear on your caller ID. And it's totally legal, unfortunately, because it was presented as a great way, to trick your friends or to, play a practical joke on your friends. But it really spiraled from there. That's not what it's being used for at all. And it's a big, big problem. And some of the most prominent robocalls or imposter scams, kind of the same thing that you're talking about, that we are hearing about lately, are people impersonating the Social Security Administration and leaving a message on voicemails that your Social Security number has been linked to some kind of crime and we're going to deactivate it unless you call this number. And then when they do call that number, they're asking for fees and things like that, processing fees. So be aware that that's a very popular scam. They're impersonating the IRS always. That happens, where there's a problem with your income tax or that you owe money to the IRS. Of course, that is a total scam because that's not the way the IRS or the Social Security Administration, for that matter, would operate. I mean, first they would mail you a letter through regular mail before they call and demand money on the spot.
Yeah, exactly. I want to talk about the do not call list for just a moment because I keep hearing from people so frequently, oh, it doesn't even pay to put your name and number or your number on the do not call list because all these people still call. People like these so-called charities and some legitimate charities and so on and so forth. But, I still use the do not call list.
Right.
And it can't hurt to put your number on there.
Right.
But one thing I discovered as I was putting together some research for this show is that it appears to me anyway from looking at the website that, we used to have the federal website and then we'd have the
State.
one just for the state. And when I looked at this online, the state is now saying that they use the national do not call list. So that's kind of nice because now you just have to register it in one place. Right.
And it used to be, I think, for 3 years, but now it's permanently until you decide to remove your number.
Okay.
So, and I hear the same thing all the time from people. The do not call list doesn't work. Why should I even bother? I still get calls. Well, you're right. You're still going to get calls. It's not 100% foolproof. And the reason is because scammers don't pay attention to the do not call list.
Right.
But legitimate telemarketers do. And they will scrub their call list against the do not call list before they start making those calls. Scammers don't. They don't care. They're probably not operating in the country.
There's the big problem.
Right. Right. So my biggest advice to people, if they want to stop robocalls and telemarketing calls and scammers, is do what I did, and that is download No Mo Robo. I don't know if we've talked about this before in the past. But
it doesn't sound familiar.
So
No Mo Robo. Okay.
NOMOROBO.
Okay.
So here's the story behind that. The Federal Trade Commission and said this is such a problem. This is the number one complaint that we get. Let's put it to the private sector to help us solve this problem. So we'll have a contest to see, who can help us get rid of telemarketing, spam, robocalls. And the winner of that contest was the person who invented a piece of software called No Mo Robo. And what it does is it's sort of like a filter on your phone. And if a phone number or a call comes in, it's put through this filter of NomoRobo, and if it's on the blacklist of a known spammer or scammer or telemarketer
Or spoofer?
okay. It will disconnect the call for you.
Oh, how nice.
So it rings once and then it doesn't ring again. Now, a legitimate call will still get through, no problem, as it always had. But the nice thing is that if you're sitting at the dinner table or, you don't want to be interrupted and the phone rings, because that's always when they're calling, you know that if it rings once and is disconnected, then it must have been a scam call.
So let's just say I have this, and it's something that you download. Is that what you said?
Well, you start by going to NomoRobo website. That's
Okay.
how I did it.
Okay.
And they will give you, and they'll ask you some questions about how you receive your phone calls. Like, is it a digital? First of all, it has to be a digital phone connection. So the traditional analog lines, I don't think very many people have those anymore.
No, I don't think so either.
But if you have digital phone service, like it's through your cable company or your satellite network company, then you probably will qualify. And they will give you instructions on how to contact your voice company or your phone company to do this. So for me, it gave me, call this number, it's for Spectrum, your phone provider, have them install this on your phone. You could just go to the customer service number of your phone provider and see if they can do that for you.
I might already have that then, because my phone service, I have cell, but I also still have a landline, and it is through Spectrum, Time Warner Cable, whatever their name is these days. And I actually went into my phone services, and I saw something about that,
Right.
and I just clicked on that, and I got to tell you, it's been a godsend. Because I'll hear my phone ring. Just yesterday, I had 3 of them. And I don't know what was significant about June 19th, other than my nephew's birthday. But the phone, 3 different times, it rang just one time, and then it just stopped. And I thought, it's working for me. It's
Yes.
working.
So actually, I think it was last week, they're considering legislation to do this automatically so that customers don't have to opt in.
Very cool.
So that would be even better news if that pans out.
So here's a question then. Say say that a phone number comes up on my caller ID as being a legitimate friend's number, but it's a spoofer calling, actually. Because it's going through this filter, it too would only ring once and then disconnect.
I don't think so. I think they have the ability to tell it's a spoofed number, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, all right.
That's the first time I've really ever been asked that question.
Yeah, well, leave it to me to come up with something interesting,
Yeah, but this is, everywhere I go, this is the thing that people want to talk about because it is such a pain in the neck.
Oh, of course. It's, it almost makes you not want to answer the phone. And while we're talking about that then, there has been a scam out there, and I don't know if we've discussed this in the past or not, but it is, like you'll answer the phone and someone will say, is this so-and-so? And you'll say yes. And then they use that yes, they splice that into something else, and before you know it, they've got access to your credit card, maybe all your credit cards, and before you know it, they are getting you charged on your credit card for something that you've supposedly said yes to.
You've agreed to.
Yeah, and so it's best to not say yes if you do answer the phone.
Yeah, I think it was maybe a couple of years ago already where we have a scam tracker portal where people can submit reports if they think they've been contacted by a scammer. It's a great tool because we plot those reports on a map so people can find out what's happening in their neck of the woods. But I would say, 75% of the reports for a small window of time a couple of years ago, it was the "Can you hear me now?" scam. So, the person would answer the phone, there'd be some fumbling, and then they'd go, "Oh, can you hear me?" And so, yes, I can hear you, and then they'd be disconnected. And so, to this day, we have never been able to connect the dots where they said yes and then this happened to them. But it's one of those things that you would never know that this is why you're receiving this unordered merchandise, or this is why you have these unauthorized charges on your credit card because of something that happened to you 2 years ago. It's really hard to make that connection. But your advice, to be mindful of that, and if someone you feel is trying to dupe you into saying yes to something, don't do it.
Yeah, I truly, unless it's a number that I know, and I kind of need to be careful about that, like everyone does, because if it is a spoofer, but, I will, if I recognize the number, I'll say hello. If not, I'm just not going to answer the call.
Yes. We always warn people, if you don't have this Nomo Robo, or if you do have a traditional landline, get an answering machine and screen your calls. That's great advice. But also, never ever give out personal information unless you've initiated the call. So if you really do think that maybe the IRS is calling you, and I can guarantee you that it's not the IRS, but if you think it's the bank calling you and they say there's a problem with a deposit or something, rule of thumb, I'm not going to give out any personal information unless I've initiated the call. So if I get a call like that, I would say, okay, I am going to go and call my bank to a number that I know to be correct, like on my statement or something, and I'll call you back.
Yeah.
I tell the story all the time, but every year I get a call from the Appleton Post-Crescent. Do I want to renew my newspaper subscription? And I say yes, but I have a personal philosophy. I never give out my credit card number over the phone unless I make the call. So, can I call you back? What's your name? Your name's John. Okay, John, I'm going to call the customer service number on the back of my bill and ask for John. Will you be there? Okay, great. Then I'll give you my credit card. I just think that's, good advice for everybody to follow.
Sure, yeah. Speaking about credit cards, we did talk about this a few times, a few shows ago when you were on. What is the deadline for all the credit card companies and the financial institutions to have the chip on the cards? Because there is a deadline, right? And isn't it coming up soon?
That's a really good question. We have not talked about that. I think that they were just allowed to phase them in as those credit cards expired. Because they knew that would be an enormous cost to do it all at once. So I'm not sure that I know the deadline for that.
Well, and I know that people were still, and again, this is some kind of software or whatever, even if you've got a chip or you've got the magnetic strip, it doesn't seem to matter. And this I have been a victim of, and it didn't take much to get it resolved. But I had charges showing up on my credit card and my debit card that I never made, I never authorized. Some were in different states, and I'd never even been there. And what my bank explained to me is there can be someone sitting in a parking lot in a car, or they can be walking through the parking lot, but they've got software that they can just pull your numbers off of your credit card, and they don't even have to lift your wallet or anything.
Yeah, it's a radio frequency ID scanner, yes.
And I got burned by that. Well, I shouldn't say burned because the money was refunded, but I got taken by that a few different times.
Really?
And so what I ended up doing is it didn't cost me that much money, but I went on shop on Amazon. So I found an RFID protected wallet, or at least a section of the wallet, and that's where I keep my credit cards now. And I don't walk around like some people do with every credit card in the world that they own.
Good.
I have one or two, and that's it, and it goes in that little thing. And you know what? Since I've done that, I haven't had a single problem.
Really?
Yeah. So
interesting.
It could be coincidence. It could be that it's actually working. But I don't know. I'm not going to knock something that seems to be working for me. So watch. Now, the next time you come on, I'll have a story that I've been burned.
I hope not. I hope not.
I hope not either. We've got about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
And I want to get to, let me take a look here. A lot of these are scams. And health insurance scam, you know, open enrollment has passed, and but luckily you won't be without insurance. And, you know, can you talk a little bit about that? Because that affects, I mean, everybody. Insurance affects everybody.
Well, at the end of the year, usually during a Medicare open enrollment period, which goes, I think, from the end of October to mid-December, we do hear about a lot of people impersonating Medicare or trying to get people to enroll in their supplement plans. So they'll ask for Social Security number or Medicare number, or another one I've heard is that we need to reimburse you for something, so give us your bank account number. So, you know, I guess I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to by the healthcare scams, but you know, you really want to be careful. It's so easy. I mean, if you're enrolling for a healthcare plan, a standard question is, what is your Social Security number?
Yeah.
And so you want to be awfully sure that the person who is calling you is not an imposter, you know, just trying to steal that number.
Yeah. Jury duty scams. This is one that I found on AARP. And what they do is someone will call up and they'll say they're Officer so-and-so from the police department, and they're calling to inform you that you've been called for jury duty, and that a warrant has actually been issued for your arrest.
Because you've missed jury duty.
Right, because you missed it. And that you have to call them back immediately to avoid going to jail.
Yes.
And so what's the scam there? What are they trying to do?
Well, they're trying to get money out of you. You know, so the police department, the judicial system, the IRS, they're not going to call you right away to tell you this. You know, you will have receive some kind of letter, you know, that you're up for jury duty or that you owe money to the IRS. So what they're going to ask you to do is, you know, give me your credit card number to pay the fine, or go to a local pharmacy or something and buy a prepaid debit card and then read me the number on the back of the card. And that should be a red flag, alarm signals going off, because if somebody asks you to pay for something with a gift card or a prepaid debit card, it's a scam.
For sure. Let me just look at what else we have here. We talked about the Social Security scam. And you know what bothers me is I think that part of this, and this is just my own personal opinion, but I do think that the government in some ways, whether it's local, state, or federal, in some ways, they're kind of responsible for some of these Social Security scams because, you know, Social Security Administration says, do not give your Social Security number out to anybody. And yet you go to apply for a fishing license, you have to provide it. You have to, you know, so many times a doctor's office will ask for it.
Right.
You know, and it's just, I don't know why everybody's asking for this when the Social Security Administration says, do not give it out to anyone. They don't even want you to carry it in your wallet.
I know. And so, like, I think, you know, like if you go to a doctor's office or something and you're filling out the new patient form and they ask for your Social Security number.
I won't give it.
I don't either. And what they're asking for is, you know, how do we go after you if you don't pay your bill? How do we report you to a collection agency? But I leave it blank, and I would never put that on unless they can give me a really good reason why they need it.
Yeah, somebody told me once upon a time that, well, that's how we have our records. You know, they're not alphabetized, they're by Social Security number. And I just said, well, that's a really dumb way of keeping records. And no, you can figure out another way, but I'm not giving it to you.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can sometimes be a hard ass. So.
Or let's just say, you know,
I'm a smart consumer.
My Social Security number are 9 9s. Okay, will that work for your system? Because I'm not going to give you my Social Security number.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
Chips and cards we've talked about. Ransomware, real quickly.
Yes.
This is a big thing.
It is a big thing. It targets businesses. Usually, ransomware is where all of a sudden you're sitting at your desk and something pops up, your computer freezes, and a pop-up appears that says, we've frozen your computer, you need to call this number so that we can unlock it. It's a legitimate thing. I've known several businesses, even hospitals, police stations, lots of people around the country have fallen for it.
Yeah.
And the way that ransomware usually comes into a network is that somebody opens up an attachment or download. They think they're downloading a software update, but they're really opening the door to this ransomware. And once they do it, it is, their computer is locked up. So that's knowing, if you are in a company where you regularly are opening up attachments from strangers, get some kind of virus scanner or something that you can scan those documents before you open them.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. Grandparents scam, just real quickly. That's
Happens
one that a lot
too.
of people are falling for.
Relative in trouble kind of scam where the phone rings, the voice on the other end of the line says, "Grandma, it's me, your favorite grandson." And Grandma kind of fills in the blank. "Tommy, is that you?" Yes, it's me, Tommy. And Tommy goes on to explain that he's been in a terrible car accident or some other reason why he needs Grandma to wire money. And these are professional, these are people from call centers in another country. They're professional salespeople. They know exactly what they're doing. They're very good at it. They sound so believable. For every objection you have, they have something to overcome it. Like, "It doesn't sound like you, Tommy." "Well, I broke my nose, and that's why I sound different." So be very careful of that. It happens so much. People think I'm too smart to fall for something like that, but it happens a lot.
Absolutely. And credit reports. I think it's really important that people check their credit reports at least once a year, and they can get those reports free once a year, correct?
Yes, annualcreditreport.com. You're entitled to one copy of your credit file every year. So some people like to stagger those and do, there's 3 credit bureaus, so get one report every 4 months. That way you're kind of monitoring your credit every year.
Okay.
But what we really recommend is getting a credit freeze, and that locks down your credit file. So even if somebody did have your social security number, like in a data breach or something, they wouldn't be able to use it because your credit is frozen. They can't open a new credit account.
But then if you're trying to open an account, you need to unfreeze it, right?
You do. And when you set up that freeze, you get a PIN number. You can just go online and unfreeze your credit, and they're supposed to unfreeze it within an hour. Usually it's instantaneous, but it's supposed to be within an hour. And it's free now. It used to cost $10 per bureau, but it's totally free now.
So you can go to each of the 3 major credit card bureaus and freeze your stuff with each of them.
I believe you have to go to, yes, you do
Okay.
have to go to each one of the 3 bureaus.
Okay. Wow, we've packed a lot into this hour. I always love having you, Susan, because, we always have such fun, and I really think that the information that you are providing the viewers and the listeners is just phenomenal. So I can't thank you enough, and I can't thank the Better Business Bureau enough for what you do, because you're a nonprofit.
Yes.
And so
Well, I
thank you.
appreciate that. And we're best used when you use us before there's a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
We're happy to help you with a complaint issue, but check out the company first with the Better Business Bureau, and you're going to be much happier with the result.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for
Before we
having
want to
me.
go, before we go, I just want to say that if you'd like to volunteer on this show, we're always looking for new people to come on board. You don't need any experience. We'll provide the training, and there's a screen that should be popping up here pretty quick, and you can just contact us via, there it is right there. You can contact me by email, and we can talk about that. But if you have a few extra hours each month and would like to help us out, that would be fantastic. I also want to reach out to our director, Daryl Dukacek. He is recuperating from major surgery. So, Daryl, you hurry up and get well and come back. And thank you to Ian Bartlett for filling in during the last couple of shows, not the one just prior to this, but in the last month and a half, Ian has filled in with a couple of them, so thank you. Thanks always to Susan and all of our other guests that we have on from time to time, and to the crew, thank you, and most of all to you. We will see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.